I'd say probably the scheduling to the like, you know, the arrival, the lane app, that kind of stuff through the MPI, and then back to the customer. That whole loop is probably where we focus the most around and where we send the most benefit from. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Yep.
We are going to go live here.
Gone recording.
Just about any minute.
I'm getting lost in the Facebook distraction.
What do you
every time I wait for this thing to go live, I pull up Facebook waiting for it, and there's always something that just their algorithm just hooks me.
Algorithm. Those big beastly campers. Is that what it is?
Not this time. I wish. This one was something about some people pulling snakes out of something. It was weird. Oh, there's the Earth Roamer. Yeah.
I'm showing that to Justin.
The Earth Roamer.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
Cool. Yeah. You know.
So funny story. Yeah. Well, so I have a friend who out there. He has a dog. This is back in when I was in college. I went to school in Colorado. He's got a wolf dog named Loki, and they're sponsored by Earth Roamer. So they like travel around in these Earth Roamers. You know, I see like posts of them with like, you know, celebrities driving these. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Those things are awesome.
Yeah. The idea
they should be for $500,000.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's a cheap one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where they start.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. It's like a F450 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a 550. Yeah. And then they got another one for $1.5 million that's on the 750 platform.
It's crazy. Yeah, my friend took it clear out some long road trip about like a week and a half. Shot a bunch of pictures with Earth Roamer, and just he's pretty much living the life. He got in on the whole Instagram social media thing early, and they're sponsored by like Toyota now, GoPro. You know, it's insane. So
really,
yeah, pretty cool.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's one of those dreams, man. You find something that you're just super passionate about, and you're able to just, you know, turn that into your job where, you know, work's not even work. It's just a hobby and a passion.
Isn't that what we're doing now?
And somehow you make money off of it. And
yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, I've been doing it for so long. After a while, sometimes the passion wears off.
Yep.
Find a new passion there in the same job.
Yeah. Try to recreate yourself. Yeah.
Is that when you jump to the vendor side?
Yeah, I've done that, you know.
Yep.
I think I just need better friends. That's it.
Better or just friends in general?
Less of 2 of the 4 people I see in front of me.
I was thinking you just need friends in general.
Less of people not named Josh. Let me put it that way. How's that?
Get away from all these people with their names that start with J.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like looking across here.
Good deal.
All the J's.
We are live. It's Friday. Today is the June 14th, and today we are talking about service, which really, for whatever reason, service really always gets like the butt end of everything. You know, you go to a dealership website and you're looking for service. You get the phone number. You might get an online service scheduling page. You might get some service coupons on its own page, and typically that's about it.
I have a theory of why that may have happened. I don't know if you wanted to discuss that. You know,
let's.
Maybe it's the 600-pound gorilla.
Before we get started on, John. Before we get started, quick introduction today. We've got Josh Cole. Josh, you're GM at I'm afraid of saying
Huebner Chevrolet Subaru. Yep.
And how long have you been there? You're the general manager.
Yeah, it's in my family. So I started obviously a long time ago, but I've been here full time for 8 years now. So, and probably, I don't know, 6 of those been GM for. So younger, but yeah, I've been pretty involved. So
just
to be fair,
just short of 10 years or just over 8 years. And it was funny because I was looking at your profile. You had joined DealerRefresh back in March of 2011. So just over 8 years. So we got some timelines there that correspond or overlap. Thought that was pretty cool.
It's basically right when I got back into the business. So yeah. It's funny how it happens. I'm actually it'd be a 4th generation dealership. But I live in Ohio, and I graduated high school. And a couple of things I said I really never wanted to do was I never wanted to work in the dealership business ever, and I never wanted to live in Ohio ever. So, I
check.
Yeah, never say never. But so I moved to Colorado, went to school out there, and started up with a started a nonprofit out there for a while too. And then next thing I know, I'm back home. But I love what I do now. So it's funny how it happens. So
yeah, well, it sucks. And you said it's part of the family business?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that sort of ties you into it a little bit tighter.
It does. Yeah, it does sort of. But that was never a push for me to come back. There was never any of that. So it was just, and it happened. Here I am back in Ohio running a dealership.
I can't imagine. I mean, if my parents owned, a group or even a single point, and they wanted to, I don't know. I see and hear of a lot of dealer owners like, I don't want my kids involved. I don't want them in this business. I'm like, why wouldn't you? You've worked all your life to establish.
Mine said that, and then I got in trouble.
Like this. And to be able to hand it down to your kids, to your grandchildren, I mean, that's something to be proud of. I'd be pretty upset if I was in that situation and I was looking forward to my kids taking over. Obviously, at the end of the day, it'd be their decision. So, well, kudos to you for jumping in and taking over the family business.
Well,
unlike,
as a whole, I don't think
unlike someone else.
That good of a... What's that?
I was ragging on Alex.
Oh yeah.
What were you gonna say?
We don't have the best reputation. So as kids owners, kids and whatnot. But that's
what do you mean?
For the course, I guess.
Well, as an industry, you mean, right?
Yeah, as an industry. I mean, most people that are around the dealership see the owners' kids, and they're treated a certain way and they act a certain way, and I don't know. It's justified. I've been around it too much, but so not my dad. On the other hand, I was picking up cigarette butts in 95-degree heat, and I wasn't even making minimum wage. So
you were getting a roof over your head and some food in your stomach.
Yeah. So he basically said, "Hey, tough shit."
It goes 50-50, it seems. I mean, I grew up with a number of PhDs. Papa has dealerships. And it was like half of them, are doing well and still in the business today. Yeah. And the other half are, one of them, dad pays them to stay away from the dealership. So, it's, you never know.
That's not such a bad.
Yeah. Well, so.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to have you on board and to start talking about service. Real quick, for anyone that doesn't know John Quinn, God forbid if you don't know John Quinn. It's I I don't know.
You're not cool if you don't know me.
Exactly. Well, you could all do us a favor and put the mask back on.
There we go.
So, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Quinn, just for anyone that doesn't know, they're not familiar with who John Quinn is, just give us a quick lowdown.
Let's see, real quick, failed dealer guy, failed technology guy. So I became a consultant.
You actually, you have a degree? What is your degree in?
Who, me?
Yeah, you told me a long time ago, but writing?
I have an English degree, sure. In college, I played some football, and teaching and coaching was going to be a career. I didn't get a full-time coaching job at the college I was at, and a month later I was selling cars. Stayed there for 15 years. That's where we met at some point. When did you start at Mile 1? Early 2000s?
I believe so, yeah.
Yep, so that's when we met. A little over 15 years in the dealership, wore just about every hat in variable operations at one time or another. Got to the point where if I wanted to move up any higher, someone was going to have to die, and everyone was still relatively young. And that's when I met Alex, and he dragged me kicking and screaming to Vermont to help him with Dealer.com CRM.
You didn't kick that hard. You screamed a lot, but you didn't kick.
I wasn't really panicking until you handed me a Mac after 15 years, mastering the PC. But it's been about 8 years now. I'm almost used to it. I learn quick. So right now I am chief cook and bottle washer of MJPJ Consulting. Don't look for it anywhere other than registered with the state of Vermont. If you don't know how to get a hold of me, I don't want to talk to you. How's that for arrogance, right?
Your favorite pastime is fishing?
I doing a lot of fishing. I actually wrote a novel this year, trying to figure out how and if I'm going to publish it. So it's been a fun year for me, yeah.
That, and I'm still waiting on a case of your special pancake syrup.
Oh yeah, well, it's in the mail.
All right, making sure.
Jack of all trades.
Yes.
Something happens when you move to Vermont. You start doing other hobbies that you never thought you'd do.
Yeah.
Quinn makes syrup.
I make syrup.
It's pretty damn good.
I build fishing rods. I tie flies. It's been a fun 3 years.
Running around with masks on. So, Josh, back to the dealership, service department, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about today. Why do you feel as if service, at least on the technology front at the dealership, you jump on the website and there's very little mention of service? It's the sales gets 80-90% of the real estate. Is that the case with your guys' website? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think I think it's becoming more of a focus. Obviously, everyone knows margins are dropping and it's getting tougher to make the bottom line happen. And so I think the focus is turning towards more of a fixed ops focus. And you've kind of probably seen that for the last six months to a year. I think there's not a lot of glam and glitz in it, and so a lot of focus just hasn't been put on it. We probably don't do as much as we should on our website regarding fixed ops. But the in-store process, we've obviously invested quite a bit over the past couple of years. So, in terms of technology, we've invested it. So,
what are some of the things that you've invested in that have had a positive effect on I guess the customer experience, and maybe some efficiency at the dealership? What are some of the things that you implemented, and then some things that maybe that technology has helped you guys become more efficient?
Yeah. So I'd say kind of going back maybe 3.5 years ago, we saw a product called Asr Pro, which was it was an electronic multi-point inspection, kind of owned by just its own company, and then I believe DealerTrack ended up buying them, and then obviously DealerTrack got bought by Cox. But so we put this MPI into place, and immediately saw some big benefits in terms of the customer experience, consistency, and keep in mind we use Cox Automotive for a lot of our products, so I'm not pushing them, but we've been on DealerTrack DMS since '05. That was back when it was Arcona. So a lot of these products kind of ended up falling into the Cox platform. It wasn't something where we went out and got this specifically from Cox. So so we had DealerTrack DMS, ASR Pro integrated directly with that. And I know from a fixed ops point of view, integration is really big with your DMS. You have parts numbers, parts pricing, matrices, service labor guides. There's a lot that goes into it. And when you create more time for your advisors, for your techs, for your parts guys, you just don't get buy-in, So one of the reasons we chose ASR Pro was that it had a direct integration with our DMS where the technician would basically start working on the primary items, do the multi-point. It gets sent directly to our parts guys. Parts guys would throw in the part number, and it would pull all the pricing directly from our DMS. So there's no real, they don't have to do it in the DMS, then jump to the MPI tool, then da-da-da-da. So it kind of created one flow for everybody. Once it hits the parts guys, then it goes to our advisors, where the labor guide, time guide is built right in, so they can just click that, done, and then off to the customer. So we signed up for this program because of the integrations initially, because of the time savings. And we tried it once before with a different program where nothing was integrated, and they were basically having to input it into the MPI software, then re-input it onto the DMS. And just, you're not going to get buy-in that way, not from fixed ops guys.
Well, exactly. Well, as you know, I mean, that's one of the issues on the variable ops on the sales side is integration points. You end up using 5 different tools to accomplish, just a few things, and you've got 4 or 5 different pieces of technology, and you use this one for this piece, this one for this piece, and the rest of it overlaps. And I found it's absolutely typically no better in the service department. Sometimes maybe even worse, because there's plenty of technologies out there that focus just on the sales side, and you're like, well, why can't we have that on the service side? Like, why don't we bring that over to the service as well? Or vice versa, they've got this stellar service technology that you could be applying different parts of it over into the sales department, and they don't. We don't deal with that. Well, if you just tweak this a little bit or just add this, you could be selling this to the sales side of the dealership as well. As I say, I probably
John's got some pretty strong perspective on that.
No, I'm just wondering, is Jeff just going to talk the whole time, or does anybody else get to ask a question?
Well, I mean, maybe if you have something important to say, John.
Well, taking my hand, I'm going to get rough here.
You got mask on. You can't sit still. I mean, and now you're asking for camera time.
No, I don't want camera time. I'll ask from over here. Josh, I see specific, and this is good for variable too. But I see, products that are specifically more tailored to the consumer experience. Everyone says streamline, and everyone says CSI, right? I see products that seem to be more about CSI lean, right? And I see products that seem to be more about streamlining, the experience. One of the main problems, I don't know if it's ever been solved, you tell me, was that it's very hard to answer the phone all day and take care of the customers in front of you, right? So, I mean, that's the problem since I got involved in the mid-'90s, So, what do you think is the ideal mix there? Like, I couldn't imagine a fixed product, that solely focuses on the customer experience. Like you said, double entry, they're already too busy over there, right? But at the same time, while it seems awfully sexy to say, hey, man, you're not gonna have to answer the phone anymore. This is gonna make your day easier. There has to be a return on investment too for anything that you put in. So what's the ideal mix, and what are you seeing?
That's always, no, it has not been solved, I don't think. I've got Subaru franchise, and they just came out with a slew of recalls that absolutely, we got hit with the Takata just this past January and it's insane the amount of times our phone's been ringing. So it's not been solved. It's something we're always trying to get better at. Matter of fact, I think the manufacturers are honing in on that as well, where Subaru as a brand just came out with a new thing. It's called the Subaru Concierge, where they have their own trained employees that can basically handle either all your service calls or overflow service calls. And you can customize it too. So for us, we kind of say, hey, let's send the call to the advisor for the first 9 seconds, and if they don't pick up, then it goes to the concierge. So there's not obviously you want your advisors to be front and center with the customer that's in front of them the whole time. But I think a lot of the things that appointment scheduling online, I think it's not as successful as we all thought it would be, but I think it's probably a training issue with the customer from the advisor, letting them know that, hey, the next time, but it still has to be an easy way to do that. I don't know. So,
I had some insight into abandonment rates. And I used to tell this story when I was doing some research with dealer.com, and I probably told you this story, that I was looking at a lead service scheduler, and the sample was I was a customer going in and trying to just set an appointment for my 2015 Acura MDX. And after I put in a whole bunch of clicks and a whole lot of information, I was brought to a choice, where my choices were Service Minder A or Service Minder B. And at that point, I didn't quit and just pick up the phone. I started looking through the list and realized that the list was identical for Minder A and Minder B. And I just say, well, forget it. I'm going to pick up the phone and call. So where the actual online scheduling process being way too difficult, to what I was saying, like written for the service advisor. That particular product was fantastic, had fantastic integration, and it streamlined the process for the service writers, so they didn't have to do what you said, double dip. Now, I happened to be in a Chrysler store probably 2 years ago, who had Chrysler came out with their own product, so they unhooked this other product and put the Chrysler thing in, which was something where the writers would have to, do double entry. So it served some other purposes, but the service writers just went ballistic because every appointment, they had to verify, put in their own opcodes, everything, just rewrite everything from scratch. So I'm wondering where that mix is, right? Where's the blend where, hey, this is acceptable, for the service writer, who's the same guy as the sales manager, right? And the front end. You put a product that makes, that sales managers are going to have to do 10 different things, right? It's just not going to work. It doesn't work in the lane. A lot of things haven't worked in the lane because it makes, there's not that balance that's been required to suit both the business and the consumer.
Well, how many dealerships actually have somebody overseeing or even helping service out in creating an online persona that is for a consumer? Most of the time, at least it's been my experience, that the service managers and or directors have come up through service and they're very process oriented, and they're going to stick with the same terminology they've always used and or mimic whatever's in the DMS to be the thing to describe to the consumer. Is there anyone translating for the service department is my question.
I wouldn't say not very well, no.
Right.
Yeah. I knew the answer to that one before I even asked, but I thought it was worth throwing out there on the table, which brings me to another one that always sort of bugged me a bit. And I know the reason why it never happened at my dealerships, but a lot of that had to do with politics, but let's be honest about it. But me as the e-commerce director, I always wanted to get my hands in service and help give them a presence online. And a lot of the time, because maybe the person in charge of service and the person in charge of sales didn't see eye to eye, or the budget for service marketing was non-existent, there was no way to either, one, compensate me, or B, help pay for some of the programs that I wanted to bring into play for the service department. So
that goes into my theory too. So when I think about kind of where fixed is compared to variable, I think about what spurred the creation of all of these different companies or tools or whatever you want to use, utility that we enjoy now on the variable side, right? Because in the beginning there was the DMS, in variable, and there was the DMS in fixed. When the internet came along, sales was sexy, right? People started sending in internet leads. We had to do something with them. We're starting to put cars online. We needed ways to better represent them, merchandise them, right? And upsprung an industry. My theory, though, was that coupled with the fact that, that service didn't market nearly the same amount as sales, that the DMS itself remained a relatively good tool, right? There wasn't as much need to go out and do these other things, like a CRM for sales, right? Like a vAuto for merchandising and in these customer management, inventory management tools, because for the most part it was relatively efficient. They could get the job done, and I think it's just now where there's been problems like the phone. All right, let's put a scheduler online, right? Let's face it, it hasn't done well for, I think, some of the reasons you've mentioned. It was built by service for service, not consumer friendly enough. But now, as we're starting to focus more on fixed, what that really means is the semi-willingness to put dollars into fixed, and that will make its way into some marketing, which means once there's a willingness to spend, I think the tech and the interest in building these solutions and solving these problems, starts to follow a little bit more. That's probably, Josh, what you've mentioned in seeing some solutions and in the last 6, 12, 18 months.
Yeah, and I know also you have some dealerships that haven't focused on it as much because, quite simply, there hasn't been the capacity to add additional, you don't have the capacity, So I know for a long time we struggled. We had Chevy, then Subaru, and recalls with Chevy, recalls with Subaru. Not to mention, I think a lot of dealers have been really focusing on used for the past few years, so they've got a lot more internal ROs going through the shop. So the capacity is a little bit more constrained. And so for me, if I would have gone out and really spent a lot of money on advertising, my service manager would have shot me, and then we wouldn't have been able to get it through. So so there's also that back end thing where what you sell in service is ours. So you got to have the right. So I mean, I would love to get to the point where we can start advertising and really pushing that, but just when I thought we were starting to get there, then some more recall work came out. It's like,
yeah, you can always find a place to hide another unit somewhere, but yeah, it's a little, it's a different story, popping lifts up.
Yeah, well, or technicians. So,
what's your percentage of appointments that are made online? So, of all your service appointments, what's the percentage that's being scheduled using your online scheduling?
Probably 10% or less, I'd say. Yeah,
really?
I'd say that's from what I've talked across the country. That's about average.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Put it in perspective for you, Jeff, on that percentage. When John and I were working closely with the ASR team, we looked at purchasing a service scheduler, and this was pre the Cox acquisition of DealerTrack. And DealerTrack only had ASR Pro plus the DealerTrack DMS. So we're looking to fill that service scheduler hole in the lineup. And we looked at some other ones, and we got some numbers back, and it was shocking. Like I think some of them were excited when more than 3% of the service appointments were scheduled through the online scheduler. We had one tell us their number one dealer was doing 12.75%.
That's pretty low. Yeah.
And that was a BMW store. So for some reason, BMW seems to be the highest brand of service scheduling utilization. You get into the domestics, it starts to fall off a lot.
Did you see a swing and depending upon which online service scheduler was being used?
Oh yeah.
So, well, you got X Time.
Highway.
Yeah, and really, what 10 years ago we had, I'd say onwards of about 8 to 10, and I think it's which is crazy. And I think it's sort of it's dwindled down to what, maybe 3 or 4 now. You still have X Time. I think Time Highway somehow, some way or another, is hanging in there.
They've got an OEM deal that keeps them alive.
Okay. You've got a smaller company, My Karma, which I was going to talk about here in the future. You've got there's another one out there. I forget what it's called. Auto Loop, I believe. I believe they've got one. One that I was.
The next category, by the way, would be your website tools that are directly doing it. That aren't. That's really just more of a fancy form, but a lot of
correct.
And then some CRMs also have some ways to pull that.
Yes, that's right. I believe eLead has something. I believe DealerSocket probably has some type of plug-in. Whenever I was overseeing all the younger dealerships, we were using, which, as far as I know, no longer exists. Now I have a brain fart and forget the name. It was Dominion's product, Auto Revenue. It was prior to Dominion acquiring Auto Revenue. And then something happened once Dominion bought it. I think it pretty much disappeared. I always felt as if that was best in class. Our Nissan dealership, we were scraping an average of about 26 to 27% of our service appointments were through the online scheduler. The Mercedes dealership was in the high teens, and the Toyota dealership was in the low 20s, which would have thought the Toyota dealership would have had the highest. So whenever I hear these single digits and really low teens, I'm like, I really never compared our numbers to anyone else, but I'm like, wow, we were well above the average, and that was a good 8-10 years ago.
Well, to Josh's point, he was saying that if you're not training your customers to use it, you're just throwing it up on your website and the abyss of no service content, then it's going to disappear.
I mean, I wouldn't say I was training our customers, but it was definitely, I used several different avenues that pushed the message. Whether it was on the website, whether it was in the newsletter, whatever it was, we really pushed it, and did very well with it. So it's really sad to see that we went from so many online service schedulers to have it dwindle down to just a handful.
Well, isn't that the case with all of the major technologies? They've all been acquired.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. I mentioned on the revenue. It was acquired and then somehow shelved and forgotten about.
Happens to some very good products.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other
for a while, we can probably name off at least a good dozen very quickly. So
the other thing that's been pretty important.
Yeah, I was looking at the Asr Pro that was acquired.
Who's got the mute button for Kirshner? For Christ's sakes, Josh is trying to say something.
I have the capability of just turning you off, John. I can hit the eject button at any moment. Any moment, I can hit the eject button. So just shut up. So Asr Pro was acquired by DealerTrack, and then of course acquired by Cox, and that was back before.
So going back to the online scheduling, an important thing these days also is with manufacturers controlling more and more of every aspect of the dealership's life, they're being more and more picky about who the dealer can use for scheduling, and it's a little different, more so than just a website or whatnot, because the other thing that they're looking at is obviously they've got their tier 1 sites that can drive service traffic to the dealership, But then a lot of them are also starting to experience with in-vehicle telematics, where the vehicle will be able to, you'll be able to either schedule from your vehicle directly. And so they've got to have a way to get that directly into the dealership's, DMS essentially, eventually. But so you see this more of a control from, at least I know from the manufacturers we work with, that they require one or two different vendors we've got to have basically so that they can integrate them. So
yeah, they've been talking about that for quite a while. Has any manufacturer implemented that yet?
I just can't believe that the following conversation isn't very close to happening, right? Where you get in your car, or it's Siri, or it's Alexa, says something to the effect of, hey, your 10,000 mile service is due. I see your calendar is open on Tuesday. There's an available appointment at the dealership on Tuesday, right? Say yes to confirm your appointment. You know, it really should be that simple, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's starting to come out. It depends on the telematics units in the car, actually, from the car's perspective. But you see it a lot with a lot of the manufacturers' apps that they have for your vehicles now, where it's built in. You know, they can couple taps, schedule an appointment. You know, GM has their. I'm talking about Chevy and Subaru because that's what we have. But GM has their My Chevrolet or GMC or whatever else app. Subaru has theirs. Couple taps and it'll tell you you're scheduled. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that with my current car. That's a nice little feature.
How does that work, Alex?
So I have an app on my phone that when I open the app, now unfortunately it's not like always running because I don't have it set up in the background, but when I use the app, which I can use to turn my car on or lock the doors or that kind of thing, which is handy in the wintertime up here. It'll go through and do a little check, check the vehicle out, and it'll tell me that you're due for service. Do you want to schedule it? And you just hop in the app and it tells you what appointment times you can choose from. And so far it's been pretty flawless. I was expecting the number of times I've had this app for a few years now, but I've been expecting the ball to get dropped and like get a call like, oh, that wasn't a right. We shouldn't have shown you that appointment time or something. But no, it's actually been pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm.
What manufacturer is that?
That's Ford.
Okay.
I'm working with Heritage Ford in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I have to get my parents on that because I know they just got a Ford and I know they're not using the app. I believe Mercedes has the exact same thing. I know they've got the app. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure if you can schedule a service appointment through that. But back to what you were saying, Josh, it does make sense where the manufacturers might actually put an even tighter hold on the dealerships on what online service scheduler that they have to use because of that. So that makes sense. What about customers at the dealership now? They've already scheduled their appointment. What technologies are you using in the Bay? You mentioned that you're using ASR. I guess it's your sort of an MPI multi-point inspection tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And is that something that's is that implemented, or is your service team presenting that on an iPad? Is there any technology behind that, or is it? I know a lot of manufacturers offer this. Some dealerships have it, and the iPads sit over in the corner with about 2 inches of dust on them. They're not being utilized.
That never happens at your store, does it?
Oh, no. I have like 5 iPads right here.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep. So the ASR, we're still a little old school. We still print out a paper packet. But we do also use somewhat, it's color. It's got pictures. The technicians can take pictures of your dirty cabin air filter or whatever it is that they need to take pictures of, and it gets included into that. If you don't do that, then it obviously has stock photos of what a dirty cabin air filter looks like, or what worn tires look like. But so that's still pretty old school paper, whatever. But you can we do have the ability to text message it to customers where they can. We can basically text them a link to the MPI where they can approve, decline. I think you can even pay with it. We don't use that functionality, but that's more so from the MPI perspective. But once the customer scheduled the appointment, they get to our service drive, and our advisors greet them with iPads that they actually do use. They check them in. It's all X time. It's congruent. You know, they schedule it next time, whether it's our advisors, the customers, and then using that lane app, they basically check them in, and it walks them down through the process that you pretty much want your advisors to follow anyways, where you kind of go over their primary items, check their vehicle out, check the mileage, check for recalls, you know, ask about maintenance. If they just scheduled an oil change, hey, you also need a tire rotation and a air filter, you know. Walks right in, and then from there, basically using the lane app, you know, it prints the technician hard copy, prints out the customer estimate, so they're not even in the DMS. So it's a pretty smooth process. So
you're actually doing the greeting in the lane. So you'll like walk.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are your technicians, are they the ones that take the photos and then upload it to the MPI tool, and then that gets sent out to the customer?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's just all done on, you know, an iPhone or Android or whatever you need. So they're basically, you can kind of flip back and forth. So all of our techs have computers right at their bays. So so they log into that MPI, and they're knocking that out. And if they want to take pictures of something, they just pull up their app and kind of midstream, you know, go from the MPI from their computer to their phone, take a picture, and then go right back to the computer if they want.
What's the percentage of them that are using photos, and the ones that have been consistent with it? Have you been able to track, any performance behind that?
Unfortunately, no, because there's no way to break out there's no tracking as far as, hey, this tech is taking photos of this or this job. There's not tracking for that. So I can see like which technicians, you know, how well they do upselling or, you know, recommending service. I can see all that, but I can't break it out to, hey, this guy takes pictures 35% of the time. And I can't do that. So.
Your techs that are taking the photos, though, are you able to at least see, and maybe there's no report, but you can sort of take a broad look. Are you seeing that those technicians do have a higher upsell?
Yeah, I would say definitely. Yeah, if you talk to our advisors, they would say, I just don't have the hard statistics. So, yeah, I mean, anytime you go back to the cabin air filter. If you bring a cabin air filter to a customer that's just dirty, and you know stick it, you know, right in front of him, he's going to go, yeah, that's really dirty. So,
what about video?
It's just the trust factor.
You've got you're taking photos. Have you implemented video? Have you looked at maybe possibly taking a quick video and sending that to the customer?
We've thought about it. I've seen there's other products out there that do it, and I love the idea of it. We haven't done it yet because it doesn't really fit in with our current flow, you know, with our MPI process and whatnot. So there's no easy way for us to do that right now.
No, I understand that. You know, it's always easy to sit back and go, oh, this is how you should do it, and it makes sense. You know, send the customer a video, but once you're actually working at the dealership, you know, try implementing something is a lot harder than just saying that this is what you should do.
Josh, what's the biggest problem you'd like to see fixed in the next 12 to 18 months?
A surplus of technicians come available. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I don't. That's a tough one. You know, I think the one area that we really need to get better at as a dealership, this is just for us, I'm sure most dealerships are the same way, but is just keeping up to date with the customer as far as how their vehicle's progressing through the shop. So kind of a status update. You know, we don't have, you know, sales has a CRM. We don't have anything for service really to track or to set kind of a process flow for our advisors to follow up with our customer. Because that's really what you want to know as a customer. You want to put yourself in the customer's shoes and say, hey, what's going on with my car? You know, and
you might say a set of life cycles for the fix stops. Good idea.
Yeah. How about that?
It's like the CR. So in order to make service work, you must have an integration with the DMS. To your point earlier, Josh, it's so intense. At least the dependency on the DMS is so intense in fixed operations. So a lot of the CRM companies, in my experience, have not been able to make that connection to the DMS as consistent and flawlessly as maybe needed in the service department.
Yeah.
So trying to cross that bridge where they bring very good communication flows and processes and things like that over to service is sort of failed because of that DMS connection. Vice versa, the DMS companies don't seem to be able to really cross that bridge of being able to bring software that communicates well for people, so that the dealer can communicate with their customer and track it.
Right.
So there are all these divides that are really at play here, and a lot of it obviously revolves around the DMS. And just an inability for some of these niche kind of things to be able to work together. I'm just rambling here. I'm throwing something out.
No, I think that goes back to a lot of what I was saying before. Like the impetus for some of these solutions, hasn't really existed because for as far as setting appointments, writing ROs, integrated with billing and accounting, DMS was a decent tool, right? So now that you are going to struggle when we're talking about more variable things like marketing, right, and CRM. So the only solution is build a new DMS. Right? Let's just start over.
A modern DMS.
Yeah,
would be something.
Yeah.
So Josh, it sounds like you currently don't have a solution that allows your service advisors to communicate with the consumer where their vehicle is within the process?
No, I guess we do have the ability to do that. So we use texting, we use email, we use phone calls, but to set like a rigid process, or not rigid maybe, but to set a kind of a standard process where if it's just an oil change, it's pretty simple. But if it's a 2-3 hour job, here's what we want to see done. Or if it's something that's overnight, here's what we want to see done, and have that, have the advisor kind of adhere to that. And there's no accountability really, that's normally when I get the call, hey, I haven't heard anything about my car. And that's the fire that typically the service manager or someone else will have to put out, but so I think within X time, it'd be great to be able to set kind of some rules and say, hey, here's a customer that came in. They've got whatever the job is. It's going to take about 4 hours. Whether we gave them a loaner or not doesn't really matter. But here's what we want to see. We want to see a follow-up, whether it's a time-based functionality or whether it ties in with our inspection tool, where it goes from, hey, the vehicle just got into the shop and it's being inspected, or it's being fixed, or whatever that is. Kind of just to be able to set a good follow-up process. I think it's going to just benefit the customer's experience with us. So,
Hey, Josh, putting your GM hat on, right, where you're in charge of variable and fixed. How about crossover tools, right? We started to see some of this, again, years ago. I don't know how many of these companies still exist. They were just equity calculators, right, based on, hey, you're coming into service, at least tell me who's in a good position to flip the car. How about, like, here's what you're gonna pay, in maintenance or repairs, over the next few years. Here's what your equity is or non-equity. It's a good time to have a conversation there. Where's the, is there a play for that? Are you seeing anything that holistic approach to ownership, versus just fixed or just variable?
Yeah, we're seeing it, and with our Subaru brand, they just came out with a trade-up advantage program. I know it sounds pretty generic, like a lot of other manufacturers have it, but it's one of those things that Subaru is introducing to the customer, though, like pretty soon after they buy a vehicle now. And they're kind of rolling it out. What's that?
Hey, you just bought your car. Let's start thinking about trading it. Woohoo!
Yeah. Well, it's coming out more so from the perspective of, you can just kind of keep tabs on where you're at in the trade cycle. You can log into the site at any time. It's built into the app, so it kind of lets here's where we're at if you want to get in a new vehicle, and if you know that what's kind of built into that is like your Edmunds true cost to own type of stuff. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but it incorporates all of that into your payments, into what you're going to pay per month. So
is that like a tool like Notify? It's a consumer app, but will that also tell the dealers like, hey, it's time for a conversation?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So we have it on the sales side, we have it on the service side. So the service ledger, we can go out we can look at our appointments in the next 3 days, and we can have, some administrative person here kind of send out some emails kind of preparing the customer for maybe that conversation. We can also have a nice color printout for the customer to give to our advisors or to whoever's going to be doing that at your store, to kind of just have that soft conversation about, hey, if you're coming in and it's going to need some major work, you might, consider this. So
cool. Who built it? Who built
What's
it?
that, John?
Who built it? Do you know?
Auto Loop.
Ah.
Auto Loop. Yeah. Subaru is very specific though about some of that stuff where they kind of go to a company and you guys know that, I'm sure, with dealer.com, but
I've heard that.
They want to make it their own product within that company. So, yeah.
Well, I tell you, the manufacturers and the OEMs need to get on, or the dealerships need to get on this, because you've got a handful of aftermarket per se companies that are doing this. Carfax has something that they just introduced that basically does the same thing. You share your database, only a few fields, first name, last name, and I think just an email address, and maybe the vehicle that they own, and then they're able to acquire the rest of the information. They speak to the consumer on the dealership's behalf. Hey, ABC dealership is signing up or is partnering with Carfax, and with this you get a free Carfax for life, and you basically have most of your service communications are done through Carfax and then transmitted over to the dealership, and it's all within an app environment. I mean, it's pretty slick. Yeah. I sat through the demo and I was like, all right, this makes sense. I get it. The consumer, of course, a lot of times are going to believe, for whatever reason, they like to believe, the third party versus the dealership or even the OEM at some point. But what shied me away from it was you're sort of locked into it, So if you're using this product for a year and a half and all of a sudden you go, we don't want to use this anymore. Well, what about all the people that are signed up with it? They're using this to schedule their service, and you decide to cancel it. Well, now you're no longer a primary service department for that consumer. So pick the next dealership. What's the next dealership down the road, and would you like for them to be your primary? Well, all of a sudden, just because you quit paying that monthly bill, you've given up, potentially a tremendous amount of consumers. So you got to watch those technologies, those companies can sort of, in their own way, lock you into using that product. And if you cancel it, you're really screwing yourself. So any dealerships that's been, that's demoed some of these products, I think Carfax has one. I believe Evans is working on something. There's a few other ones out there. And I'm not saying they're bad tools or services. I think they're great. Just be careful because you can you end up, cutting your own throat down the road if you go to cancel. So that's why, I never really understood why dealerships really shied away from apps. If I think about 5-6 years ago, that was like the buzzword. Should a dealership, and we've got a thread over in the forums that's pretty old. You probably remember it, Josh. It's, should dealerships have an app? And everyone's like, no, dealerships, they don't need an app. They don't need an app. We've got mobile websites. They can get everything that they want through the mobile website. And my argument was, well, what about the service side? That app environment typically gives a much better experience than the typical mobile website.
Pick up the phone, call the service director. Hey, do you guys want an app? What? Nah, forget it.
And in a minute, Justin, we're talking about QR codes too.
There we go. Hey, I just bought something the other day, and they asked me to scan the QR code, and I scanned it. and it made everything so much easier.
You're the one.
But yeah, I mean, everyone was against mobile apps, and I was for it. I was like, this is going to have this has a lot of advantages on the service side, but we don't hear much about apps anymore in the for the dealership world. Matter of fact, if they're the one app company I know of, I don't even know they're still around.
I think that ship has sailed. I mean, there might still be hope for QR codes, but
the ship can always come back around, Alex.
I see the way that that Apple and Microsoft are headed, and the way they're delivering content, and they're trying to work in a world that doesn't have small businesses with their own apps. So, but I could see QR codes making a bit of a comeback, and that maybe they were a little ahead of their time. I'll give you that one.
I think Josh, are you in South Pacific somewhere where they're very big right now? Very big.
What are you talking about, John? Whatever. Josh, are you using anything on the invoicing front? We're using a pretty cool service here that we can not only communicate with the customer through text, but within that text, when their car is done and it's been billed out, we're able to send them a text with a link, and that link takes them to a mobile invoice and a mobile checkout page where they can pay for right there. I think they can use Apple Pay, they can use their credit card, and it's all done right there on the phone. And it's one of those things. If you use it and you push it, all of a sudden you've got a higher percentage of consumers using it and loving it. But of course, if you don't use it, then no one's it doesn't do anything for you.
Right.
Are you utilizing? Have you looked into anything like that?
Looked into it. We're not utilizing it. Xtime has that ability,
Okay.
But they've got a preferred merchant account that they want you to use, and so we just never set it up. We've got our own merchant account that we like to use, and it's one of those things we're actually in the process of trying to build out right now. So is a way for our customers to do that with our current merchant account.
Yeah, and I would guess you'd want to use your own. I guess some of them probably have different charges, right? Different percentages.
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah, so I could that could
break in. It is seamless. It is really seamless from that tool. Whenever I said you could send the link to the customer to approve or deny the charges, I mean, there's also a link that you can send them right then and there to pay for that exact bill right through their phone, kind of like you said with Apple Pay and whatnot. It's not something we've ventured down yet, so we haven't gone down that road yet. But I like the idea.
Yeah, and I always like the idea of before you pay, would you like to potentially apply? Rather than paying your bill, would you potentially want to look at getting into a new vehicle? We could take what you owe, and we'll have a service bill. We'll apply that to your next car payment. And I don't see, really, John, that's sort of what you touched on. Why isn't there a service out there so whenever you go to pick up your car or when you go to pay your invoice, why isn't there a quick way to find out if you can get into another vehicle, just like what you have newer at about the same payments? Just one of those equity mining pieces. And what you said earlier is just, why can't we marry that between the sales and service department? I know a lot of successful dealerships, they've got someone that works in the service department. They're using their automotive mastermind, or they're using their perfect prospect, whatever it may be, their equity mining tool, and they're approaching the customer in the service bay to see if they can get that customer in for an appointment, do a free trade appraisal, all that good stuff. Is that something that you guys are doing there?
I would say that's the one reason why. That's the one downside about texting a link for the customer to pay. That's really a conversation you'd want to happen in person. And if they already paid, probably the conversion on that's going to be really, really low. So
unless you had a way of putting the offer in the text.
Right. That's true. Yeah. But you still don't want the customer to pay for that service bill.
Unless you're using that as down payment on the car.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. You already have the money. That's a good point. You could, yeah. That's a good point.
One question for you. So I'm sure I spoke to you about a couple years ago when I was talking to dealers about, just various problems, in the lane. I settled on, and I really kind of got behind this idea about pre-selling, and I likened it to just things we learned in F&I over the years, right? When a salesperson kind of tees up the F&I department, and introduces the notion of a product before the F&I person asks them to make a decision on whether they want to purchase it, the percentage of people saying yes just goes up, right? It's not new. It's not that reactionary. No, I don't need this. And so the story became like, hey, you really should. I'm here for an oil change. Well, you really should, replace your cabin air filter. No, I don't need anything like that. And the thought was, if they were introduced to this notion of when they call to get the oil change that, hey, you probably should. Here's a picture of a dirty cabin air filter. You might want to think about changing that. By the time they got to the lane and we asked them if they want to, transact, that we would have a higher percentage of people saying yes. So I was specifically looking at, that type of solution I was working for a marketing company, right, dealer.com, to say, hey, there might be a play for this on the website, right? Or this might be a play in some type of advertising, this notion of pre-selling. Thoughts on that? Have you seen anything like that? Or just tell me, boy, John, that's a great idea. You were right.
It's a great idea. You were right.
Show's over.
I don't know what the implementation would be, but I do have a little bit of experience with something similar to that, where for a while we signed up for an outside BDC for our service department that basically handled a lot of our service calls and really kind of kept the advisor front and center with the customer. And they were tied in with our service scheduling tool, which pulls in factory maintenance guides, which pulls in all the things you want to upsell, like you mentioned. And so one of the things we found is that, obviously there's a certain percentage that are going to say yes on that call. Yeah, just sign me up. If they call in for an oil change and the factory maintenance calls for an oil change, tire rotation, cabin air filter, most of I'd say it was maybe a 30% upsell just to that cabin air filter and tire rotation. So it's your maintenance. Those that said no, once they came into our store, we would hit them again using that lane app. So it's consistent. So it's from the phone call to the in-store. It's all the same experience for the customer, and we're saying the same thing. So we saw an improvement in that from just that outside BDC recommending the exact same thing that we were recommending in the lane. So we've since moved away from that outside BDC, but it was a good experience that I think you're onto something with that. I just don't know the best way to implement it. I wouldn't know how to set that up. So
neither did we. No.
Yeah.
What made you move away from the BDC?
It was just a little bit of a lack of some of the way they handled some of the calls wasn't really the best. Every call was recorded, and I could probably tell you 75% were handled just fine. There's 25% of the calls that weren't handled very well. We're in a smaller area, smaller town, so if you get some chick named Barbie answering the phone, it's like, our customer's like, I know you don't have a Barbie working at the store. So there was just a little bit of a disconnect. And I would personally get a lot of calls saying I had a bad experience with that. And I'd go back and listen to, as many as I could. And like I said, 75% were fine. The other 20% weren't.
Well, when you're in a small town like that, that 20-25% is that's actually
makes a difference.
Significant amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I run into that with our dealership, and I have to remind myself quite often. I was like, 20%. That's a big number for us, being a high-end dealership,
right.
In a small town, and no other high-end dealership within an hour away. of any type. So it's yeah, it definitely
Yeah, I go back to, I mean, when we did cancel, I said, if we were located in a bigger metro market that really doesn't have that personal, you have some personal, but not really that much of a personal feel. I think it'd be a great setup. Yeah, so that's the reason we canceled. But I did see an increase in our upsells with that. I think just simply mentioning it beforehand. Our advisors notice the difference too. So.
Yeah, anytime you can educate the consumer on something pre-pitch, you'll usually win them over more often. And that goes for F&I too.
Yeah,
about going into a good restaurant, right? And a nice restaurant. Well, they'll go in and, hey, I really recommend this, but it's the host, the person who seats you. And by the time they get your order, you've thought about it a little bit, and you're past that initial reaction of, no.
Yeah.
You want $55 for that?
Bargain.
Or why they bring out the dessert tray, ahead of time too.
I have one very important question for Josh. Whose autograph is on the Browns helmet behind you?
That's Bernie Kosar.
Oh man, he was a good one.
And that's where I got a picture of him signing it right there. So
I promise you and I are the only two on the call who know who that is.
I think Ryan Montville, who was watching through some Go Browns up in the comments, probably knows too.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Bernie, out of Heisman Trophy winner out of Miami, was it?
What's that?
Bernie, Heisman Trophy winner out of Miami before being drafted by the Browns.
I believe so. That is before my time, but I believe so.
I'm dating myself. I know.
Yeah.
Alex, before we sign off here, was there anything? Did we have any questions?
I mean, we could talk about service forever. I think we hit the highlights. And there's some deeper philosophical things that I'd love to talk about. The psychology of the way different departments work together, or even the transition from being a department that used to repair cars and now just maintains cars. I mean, there's a lot of neat things to discuss. I don't know, not easy things to solve, but we should probably end it before we end up going down those rabbit holes for another 5 hours or so.
Well, Josh, we definitely we thank you so much for joining us today and for answering the questions and just talking about service in general. I know service, we can all agree, just doesn't get enough love, and but we are, at least I'm starting to see a good swing in the other direction. And you said you've seen a good swing in the last maybe 6 to 8 months. I've been seeing the swing a little bit longer, but hopefully it keeps going in that direction because there's as dealerships have great dealerships have already figured out that the service department's where it's at. It's where they need to make their money, and variable ops side just becomes the gravy. So
yeah.
So thank you so much, Quinn. I would thank you, but I just really don't want to.
Bernie Kosar did not win the Heisman Trophy. I was wrong.
See?
Pardon the interruption. Corrections at the end, right?
What's new?
Told you, before my time.
All right, John.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see everyone back here next Friday. And again, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Got it. All right. Take care.
See ya.